This is a quick discussion on accounting for labor. Okay. Our objective for this slide are the following. No? First, you should be able to state the different classification of labor. Okay. Also, at the end of the discussion, you should be able to prepare payroll sheets, no, and payroll classification sheets, and then you should be able to know, no, how to account the labor related costs. Okay, so our discussion will be divided into three parts. Okay, first we'll be talking about the factory payroll costs. Second, the labor activities, and then you have your labor overheads. Okay, so to start with the factory payroll costs, no, basically there are two kinds. This is just a review. You have your direct labor and you have your indirect labor. So what is direct labor? Okay, this is the cost of labor that is directly related or directly involved in the manufacturing, no, or in the production of your product. And it can be easily traced. So that is the most important characteristics of direct labor. It can be easily traced to the product. Now, as a review, when we say traced, no, it's as good as saying it can be easily estimated, no. For example, okay, for a given product, we know that the person who assembled, no, ay ganun na lang, who made the product, no, used 2 hours of his time. Okay, and then the rate for this person is, let's say, 500 pesos per hour. So you simply multiply that 500 pesos times 2 and you will get 1,000 pesos. So that's the meaning of a traceability of cost. It can be estimated how much of that cost is attributed to the production of that product. Okay? And aside from that, okay, direct labor represents a major labor cost of producing that product. Okay, so when we say major, it is material in nature. For indirect labor, well, any labor cost, no, any labor cost that cannot be classified as direct labor is classified as an indirect labor. Okay, so this is a factory labor cost not directly traceable. Okay, so because it is not directly traceable, okay, how do you compute for the cost? Okay, most of the time it is allocated. So let's write that down. This is just a review, no? For direct labor, it's traceable. For indirect labor, most of the time, this is just allocated or applied. Ayan. It's not considered worthwhile to try to relate the cost of the indirect labor to production. Well, what does that mean? Okay, sometimes it is impossible, no? Impossible to trace, or it may be traceable but it is impractical. Okay, so maybe the cost of tracing that cost, no, is higher than the cost itself. Ayan. Now we have previous examples of direct labor and indirect labor. So you just go back, no, to that discussion. So here are some of the examples. For direct labor, you have the assembly line workers in an automobile factory, okay, and the knitting machine operators in a sweater factory. Okay, so those are all considered as direct labor. Direct labor is a prime cost, no? So without this cost, no, the salary of the assembly line workers, no, or the machine operator in a knitting factory, then you will not have your product. Okay, for indirect labor, some examples, you have the salaries and wages of factory superintendent or supervisors or janitors, clerk, ayan, factory accountants, product designer, and timekeeper. Okay, so why are they considered as indirect labor? Well, they're not considered as major labor cost. That's one. And aside from that, you can still continue with the production even without the supervisor or janitor, no? Even without the factory accountants or timekeepers. Okay, so ayun. Now, as a review, nabanggit na natin kanina, no? Direct labor is considered as a prime cost, okay, and at the same time part of your conversion cost, no? Indirect labor naman is part of your factory overhead and therefore only a part of your conversion cost. As a review, prime cost is composed of your direct materials and your direct labor, while conversion cost is composed of direct labor plus factory overhead. Okay, so indirect labor is part of your factory overhead, thus it's only part of your conversion cost. Okay, and because of that, okay, how do you account them? Well, direct labor, once they are incurred, they are charged against your work in process. While your indirect labor, the actual cost will go to your factory overhead control account. Okay, we will have the journal entries later. Okay, so now let's go to your labor activities, starting with the timekeeping. No? Timekeeping department accounts for the time spent by the employees in factory. Two source documents. Okay, you have your time card and you have your time ticket. So ano tong mga to? Okay, your time card is actually uso pa ba to? No? Inserted no, in a time clock by the employee several times each day. Okay, upon arrival, okay, going to lunch, taking a break, and when leaving for the day. So, time in, time out. Okay, so, ayun. It is the most common form of employees' attendance record. Well, before, at the time of the preparation of this material, no, this is the most common form. But now, okay, what is the most common form? You now have your magnetic card, no, which is found in our employee IDs. No, so you just swipe your ID. Or you have your biometrics. Ayan, you have your biometric reader. Now, your time card no, will be used, or your biometric reader, no, at the end of the day, no, it will be used to compute for the total number of hours the employees spent no, in the factory. Ayan, or in the entity. Okay? What about time tickets? Time tickets, they are prepared daily by employees for each job worked on. Okay? So, let me underline that. No? It's for each job. Labor job tickets indicate the number of hours worked, a description of the work performed, and the employee's wage rate. Okay, so again, we already have a previous discussion on the time ticket, no? So you just have to review. But just to summarize, okay, the time card will show you how much is the total hours the employee worked, while the time ticket will show the total number of hours the employee worked on a specific job. Now, so for example, no, you have Mr. A who worked 8 hours for the day. Okay, that will be seen in the time card. Now, if you want to know where did he spend these 8 hours, well, 3 hours for job A, another 3 hours for job B, and 2 hours for job C. Okay, so you will see that in the time ticket. So, ayan, we have here the sum of the labor cost and hours for different jobs, as shown in the time tickets, should be equal to the total labor cost and labor hours for the period, as shown in that time card. Okay, so there you go. Now, you have the preparation of payroll sheet. Ayan, time cards are sent to payroll departments, no, for summary. They're going to summarize that, and then after summary, the payroll department will now compute for the gross earnings of the employee. And based on the gross earnings, they will also compute for the withholding taxes, no, and other deductions such as SSS, okay, your PhilHealth, and then you have your HDMF, also known as Pag-ibig. Okay, so let's continue. Now, the following are the usual payroll deductions as prescribed by the government. Oh, anyway, let's go back to the previous slide. May nakalimutan ba ako? And of course, the difference pala, no, of the gross earnings and the total deductions will be the net earnings to be paid to the employee, syempre in the form of cash. Now, to continue, these are the normal deduction, no, against the employee's earnings. First, you have your income taxes. This will be withheld by the entity or by the organization. no, because the entity or the employer will act as a tax agent or tax collector, no, for the government. So for example, if the gross earnings is, let's say, 50,000, and let's say the employer, no, the employer deducted 5,000, okay, that 5,000 will become a liability of the employer to BIR. Okay, so ayun, because it will be deducted, no? Kaya matatanggap mo na lang will be 45,000. That will be the net, no? 50 minus 5,000. You also have your Social Security System or SSS. For government employees, you have your GSIS. Okay? This pertains to the amount of contribution which is in accordance to the table issued by SSS. Yan, the amount deducted is for the protection of the employee and their families in case of disability, sickness, ayan, old age upon retirement, also upon death. Ayan. Okay, so aside from SSS, you also have your PhilHealth, the amount of contribution which is in accordance again to the table of PhilHealth, and it will be remitted monthly. Ganun din naman yung SSS, it will be remitted monthly. Okay, the objective of this is to provide the employee coverage, no, for insurance, for health insurance. Okay po, so you have SSS, PhilHealth contributions, taxes, and there's one more, no, you have Pag-ibig or HDMF. Ano na yun? You have Home Development Mutual Fund. Ayan, this will help the employee, no, to provide housing needs. Okay, so you can apply for a loan. Ayan, if you plan to buy a house or a lot, or maybe house and lot. Okay, so yun, yung may standard deductions natin. Now, after computing the deductions, and of course the gross earnings, you can now make your journal entry. This is our main concern for labor accounting. Okay, you should be able to come up with a journal entry, no, which will be recorded in our books. So what will be our entry? Okay, you have your debit to factory payroll, okay, pertaining to the gross earnings. Now take note, this will include direct and indirect labor. Okay, although there's another approach I will show you later. But anyway, okay, this is the basic entry. Debit your gross earnings, and then you have to credit your cash if there are no deductions, or payroll payable if there are no deductions. But if you have deductions, you credit your withholding taxes payable, okay, SSS contributions payable, PhilHealth contributions payable, Pag-ibig or HDMF contributions payable, and of course you have your payroll payable. Okay, this is now your cash that will be given to your employees. So upon payment, the journal entry now will be debit to payroll payable and a credit to cash. So at the time of journal entry, if this is credited to cash, okay lang naman, no? Instead of payroll payable, you can put cash. Ayun, now if you notice, okay, these are payables. So the entity, the employer, okay, will have liabilities to liability to BIR, liability to SSS, liability to PhilHealth, and liability to Pag-ibig. Now this is just your employee's share. Okay, because there will be another entry made by the employer, no, pertaining to SSS, PhilHealth, and Pag-ibig. So, ganun din, debit to factory payroll and credit SSS, PhilHealth, and Pag-ibig contributions payable for the employer's share naman. Okay, now, as I was saying kanina, there's another approach, no? Instead of debiting factory payroll, you can debit work in process for the direct labor and debit to factory overhead for the indirect labor. Okay, so ayun na, if this is your approach, debit to factory payroll, you will have another entry, no, for the allocation. Okay, so how do you allocate? This will now be the journal entry. Debit to work in process for the direct labor, okay, factory overhead for the indirect labor, and credit factory payroll. Okay, so ayun. Now, if you don't want to make this entry, going back to our previous slide, you could just debit work in process and factory overhead. Okay, as of this point. That is, if your work in process and factory overhead are already determined at the time of this journal entry. Pero pag hindi pa, well, you have no choice. Debit to factory payroll. Okay. So, ayan. Now, let's talk about allocation. Okay, we still have to discuss this. Based on time tickets. You remember time tickets? Okay, the number of time or the total time spent by an employee working on a specific job. This is found in your employee time tickets. Okay. Total payroll cost is allocated between direct labor and indirect labor. Each week, a summary of time tickets is prepared to show the direct labor cost incurred on each job as well as the indirect labor. No? Mabilis na yan if it's per week. Sometimes they only summarize this, let's say, the day before the payroll. Okay, so, ayun. Anyway, from this summary, direct labor costs are posted to job cost sheets, and the indirect labor costs are posted to department overhead analysis sheets. Okay. Now, at the end of the month, a summary of factory wages is prepared from the job cost sheet and departmental overhead analysis sheet. The summary shows the total direct labor cost and total indirect labor cost incurred during the month. Okay, so to summarize, okay, whether it's every week or every month or most of the time, no, every 15 days, no, you have to summarize, okay, how much of your total payroll, okay, will be allocated, no, to your indirect labor and direct labor. Ganun lang naman yun eh. So how do you do that? You go back to the employee time tickets. Okay, so yun. Now, once you know how much is your direct labor and indirect labor, you can now prepare this entry as discussed earlier. The objective of this entry, okay, is to close the factory payroll account, okay, and record your work in process, okay, pertaining to direct labor, and debit the actual factory overhead, the actual indirect labor in the factory overhead control. Okay po. So, ayun. Now, let's talk about labor overheads. Okay, so we're almost done. The following are the labor costs generally charged to factory overhead control. Now, take note, the term used was generally because it really depends, no, from one entity to another. But in practice, most of the time, okay, these items are charged against your factory overhead control as part of indirect labor. So first, you have your premium pay. Okay, so from the term itself, premium, this is a pay above your ordinary pay. Okay, so it refers to additional compensation required by law for work performed within 8 hours. Okay, on non-working days, ayan, such as rest days, special days, and holidays. Now, take note, when we say special days, these are your special holidays, no? But for regular holidays, no, yung talagang declared na holidays, okay, sabi ng batas, no, we are not required to work and then we will still get our pay. Okay, so if you worked, no, during regular holidays, ibig sabihin nun, okay, you get times 2 of your rate. Okay, like for example, Christmas days, ayan, a New Year, okay, so ayun. But this one, we are just pertaining to your special holidays or your rest days. Now, it's stated that the minimum statutory premium are as follows, no? For work performed on rest days or on special days, okay, you get 30% more. So, this means, okay, that your daily rate will be multiplied by 130%. Okay, so if for one day your salary is, let's say, 1,000 pesos, no? Ayan, and then you were required to work on your rest day, you will be receiving 1,030 300 pesos. Okay, so, ayun. Now, what if, no? What if the work performed, okay, on a rest day is also a special day? Okay, so it's not just 30%, but you get 50% more. You get 50% more, di ba? Parang gatas lang na nakasale. Okay, so if your salary for one day is 1,000, okay, and then it's supposed to be your rest day, and at the same time, it's a special holiday, and you are required by your employer, okay, to work, then you will be getting 1,500 for that day. Okay po, so, ayun, that's your premium pay. 5 lang po ito. Okay, so we are now on the second. Malapit na tayo matapos. You have your overtime premium. Okay, this is the amount paid in excess of your regular working hours, which is 8 hours a day. Okay, so regular earnings represent the total hours worked, including overtime hours, multiplied by the regular pay rate. Okay, and then the overtime premium represents the overtime hours multiplied by the premium rate. So, ulitin natin to, no? Regular earnings represent the total hours worked, including overtime hours. So, for example, no? For example, you worked for a total of 9 hours. You're supposed to work for 8 hours lang, no? 8 hours lang. Kaya nga lang, nag-overtime ka ng 1 hour. So, instead na 8 to 5, umuwi ka na ng 6. So, that's a total of 9. Ayan. Sabi niya, multiplied by the regular pay rate. Okay, so what is your regular pay rate? So let's say for one day, your rate is 800 pesos. No, so 800 pesos, and per day, you divide this by 8 hours. Then your per hour is, ayan, 100 pesos per hour. So you multiply this by 100. Okay, and then yung overtime premium represents the overtime hours multiplied by the premium rate. So this is our overtime hours. So what is the premium rate? Ayan. Sabi niya, the work in excess of 8 hours performed on ordinary working days will be plus 25% of the hourly rate. Okay, so this one, what's 25% of 100? That will be 25 pesos. Okay, so times 25. Okay, kasi yun yung overtime premium natin. Okay, so, ayun. Now, if you try to get that, so you'll get 25, and then 9 times 100, you'll get 900. Okay, so for the day, you will be getting 900. Ayan, 925. Okay. So, yung iba naman, okay, there's another way to compute this. Sabi, so what's your regular daily rate? Okay, that will be 800. So, for 8 hours, we're going to pay you 800. And then, how many hours did you work overtime? You worked for 1 hour. So, you multiply that by 125% of 100 pesos. So, 125, you get 125. A total of 925. Ay, ayan. 925 pesos. Okay? So, what is your overtime premium? Ayan, yung overtime premium mo will be 25 pesos. Okay? Ano yung overtime pay mo? That's 125. But the premium is just 25. Ulitin natin, ha? Overtime premium represents the amount paid in excess of regular rate to employees working in excess of 8 hours in a day. Okay, so, ayun. Now, letter B, what if you work in excess of 8 hours, okay, but on a scheduled rest day or a special day or a regular holiday? Okay, so instead of 25%, you will be getting 30% of the hourly rate, okay, on the said days. Okay, so that's how you compute and your overtime premium. Ayan, so what is now your journal entry? Most overtime results from the random selection of jobs and should be treated like a shift premium. random lang, hindi siya planado. It's not, charge against specific job. Okay, so this should be your journal entry. No? Debit to work in process and factory overhead payroll. This one will be for your regular pay and this one for your premium. Now, if the overtime pay, okay, is a requirement of a specific job, no? Kunyari, pina-rush yan. Kasi meron tayong quota, no? You have to follow certain quotas. Ayan, so it's not just coming from inefficiencies, okay, resulting to random scheduling. Okay, therefore, it should be charged to a specific job. Then, the journal entry now will be debit to work in process and credit to factory payroll. Okay, so, ganun po siya, okay? Now, feel free to pause, ayan, the video and then take a screenshot, no, for your notes. Okay, so, ayun. Anyway, moving on. Uso pa ba yung expression na yun ngayon? Moving on. Parang pasosyal lang, no? Okay, letter C, you have your shift premiums, okay, also known as shift differential, or here in the Philippines is more popular, no, as night differential. Okay, now your shift premium is additional pay for working during less desirable evening shifts, no? In other states or in other countries, you have 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. Okay, pero here in the Philippines, no, here in the Philippines, you have 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So if you have a shift, okay, which requires you to work anytime from 10 to 6, okay, you are entitled for a shift premium. Does it mean that your shift should be from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.? Not necessarily, no? For example, you can have a shift na, let's say 4 to 12, that's how many hours? If start with 4. Assuming that there are no breaks, no? 4, okay, so we're starting with 4, so you have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so that's 8 hours. Or pwedeng 3 to 12, so that you will have 1 hour break, which is not paid, so that's still 3 hours. 8 hours. Anyway, if that is your shift and you're required to work up to 12 a.m., okay, so let's just stick to 4 to 12 na lang, which is 8 hours. Tama? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so that will be 8 hours. But 10 to 12 will be, ayun, sakop siya dito. Okay, so you will be receiving a night differential. So that will be 2 hours. Therefore, your regular rate, okay, will be times 6 hours, and then eto, regular rate plus your shift premium based on 2 hours. So let's try to read this. On ordinary day, plus 10% of the basic hourly rate, or a total of 110% of the basic hourly rate. So if your rate per hour is let's say 100 pesos, no? Kasi 800 per day, so divided by 8 hours, you get 100 pesos. So this one will be times 100. This one will be times 100 times 110%. So that will be 110%. Kasi plus 10%. Okay, so you will now be receiving how much? This will be 600 and this one will be 220 pesos. A total of 820. How much is your shift premium? It will be 820. Okay, so what if you were required to work, okay, on an evening shift during your rest day or a special day or a regular holiday? Then it's still 10%. So, di ba unfair yun? Okay, you're having a night differential and you're working at night during a special day, okay, or during your rest day, and then the night differential rate is the same with the night differential rate for ordinary day. Hindi naman, because we're just talking of your shift differential. Okay? Now, to address, no, the difference, no, on this issue, ordinary day versus rest day, you go back to the previous slide, which is, what if Ayan, ito na yung mga premiums natin. So, ibig sabihin, you will be receiving 30% okay, or 50% above the regular pay for working on a holiday or on a rest day. Ayan, and you will be receiving additional 10% for your shift differential. Okay po? So, ganun yun. Now, what if that is due to overtime? O, yan. So, plus overtime rate ka na naman. Anyway, we're almost done. You have your employer's contribution. Employer's contributions are the employer's corresponding share in the contributions to SSS PhilHealth Pag-ibig. Okay? For the benefit of the employees. So earlier, the journal entry shown is only for the employees' share. Okay? You have the same entry, no, for employers' share. It's just that no, it will not be, there will be no credit to payroll payable. Okay, so ayun lang, just to establish. Anyway, that journal entry was already discussed, no, in accounting 100 ba yun, yung basic accounting natin. Okay, and the total of the employee's share and the employer's share will now be the total liability of the employer to BIR, SSS, and PhilHealth, and Pag-ibig. Oh, I'm sorry, wala palang employer share ang BIR. Ang meron lang employer share will be SSS, PhilHealth, and Pag-ibig. Okay? And this one will be part of your labor overhead. And finally, you have your fringe benefits, no? These are expenditures paid by the employer on behalf of the employees. Okay, so that's the first type of fringe benefits. Like for example, you have your sick pay, vacation and holiday pay, health insurance, pension payments, hospitalization benefits, sometimes even even housing benefits. They are all part of the fringe benefits. Sometimes no, de minimis benefits, no, or ano ba yung mga yon, immaterial employee benefits, which is provided in the factory, can also be part of your fringe benefits. Like yung water daw, ayan, yung inumin na tubig. Or let's say you have a fountain of Gatorade, okay, and dispenser of Dunkin' Donuts and M&M's in your factory plant. Okay, sometimes no, they can be classified as part of your fringe benefits. Why? You cannot trace those costs, no, directly to your product, so you can just allocate those costs. Okay, so ayan, generally fringe benefits of the factory workers are charged to factory overhead control, although there are some companies, no, that treat fringe benefits kay related to direct labor as part of direct labor cost rather than overhead. Okay, so bakit daw ganon? This is under the ano ba, um, not conclusion, there's another term for that. This is under the assumption, ayan, this is under the assumption that these fringe benefits can be directly attributed, okay, to a specific job, ayan, or a specific project. Ayan, that's why ayun, it can be treated as part of direct labor cost. What does that mean? Let's say I'm the head engineer. No, head engineer slash computer slash machine operator of a certain project. And then I am imported from India, and I'm here as your engineer. Okay, I'll be working for this very special project. Okay. So, let's assume that the employer will be the one paying for, let's say, board and lodging for our engineer. Okay, then that part, no, can be classified as our direct labor. O, di ba? Ang swerte nung engineer natin. Okay, so I guess that's it, no? If you have any questions, please feel free to ask the question in our discussion section or in our chat box. Okay, after this discussion, we will be having a very easy quiz yan, para makapondo kayo sa inyong finals, syempre. Okay po? So, expect a quiz and maybe some assignments after this discussion was made available to you. Okay, so I guess that's it and thank you.